Chapter 5 of the Riddle of the Sands. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Gesine. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. Chapter 5 Wanted, a North Wind. Nothing disturbed my rest that night, so adaptable is youth and so masterful its nature. At times I was remotely aware of a threshing of rain and a humming of wind, with a nervous kicking of the little hull, and at one moment I dreamt I saw an apparition by candlelight of Davies clad in pyjamas and huge top boots, grasping a misty lantern of gigantic proportions. But the apparition mounted the ladder and disappeared, and I passed to other dreams. A blast in my ear, like the voice of 50 trombones, galvanized me into full consciousness. The musician, smiling and tousled, was at my bedside, raising a foghorn to his lips with deadly intention. "It's a way we have in the Dulcibella," he said, as I started up on one elbow. "I didn't startle you much, did I?" he added. "Well, I like the mattinata better than the cold douche," I answered, thinking of yesterday. "Fine day and magnificent breeze," he answered. My sensations this morning were vastly livelier than those of yesterday at the same hour. My limbs were supple again and my head clear. Not even the searching wind could mar the ecstasy of that plunge down to smooth, seductive sand, where I buried greedy fingers and looked through a medium blue with that translucent blue fairy faint and angel pure that you see in perfection only in the heart of ice. Up again to sun, wind, and the forest whispers from the shore, down just once more to see the uncouth anchor stabbing the sand's soft bosom with one rusty fang, deaf and inert to the Dulcibella's puny efforts to drag him from his prey. Back, holding by the cable as a rusty clue from heaven to earth, up to that bourgeois little maiden's bows. Back to breakfast with an appetite not to be blunted by condensed milk and somewhat passé bread. An hour later we had dressed the Dulcibella for the road and were foaming into the grey void of yesterday, now a noble expanse of wind-whipped blue, half surrounded by distant hills, their every outline vivid in the rain-washed air. I cannot pretend that I really enjoyed this first sail into the open, though I was keenly anxious to do so. I felt the thrill of those forward leaps, heard that persuasive song the foam sings under the lee bow, saw the flashing harmonies of sea and sky, but sensuous perception was deadened by nervousness. The yacht looked smaller than ever outside the quiet fjord. The song of the foam seemed very near, the wave crests aft very high. The novice in sailing clings desperately to the thoughts of sailors, effective, prudent persons, with a typical jargon and a typical dress, versed in local currents and winds. I could not help missing this professional element. Davies, as he sat grasping his beloved tiller, looked strikingly efficient in his way, and supremely at home in his surroundings, but he looked the amateur through and through, as with one hand, and it seemed one eye, he wrestled with a spray-splashed chart half unrolled on the deck beside him. All his casual ways returned to me, his casual talk and that last adventurous voyage to the Baltic, and the suspicions his reticence had aroused. "Do you see a monument anywhere?" he said, all at once, and before I could answer, "We must take another reef." He let go of the tiller and relit his pipe, while the yacht rounded sharply to, and in a twinkling was tossing head to sea, with loud clasps of her canvas and passionate jerks of her boom, as the wind leapt on its quarry, now turning to hay, with redoubled force. The sting of spray in my eyes and the babel of noise dazed me, but Davies, with a pull on the foresheet, soothed the tormented little ship, and left her coolly sparring with the waves while he shortened sail and puffed his pipe. An hour later the narrow vista of Als Sound was visible, with quiet old Sonderburg sunning itself on the island shore, amid the Dybbol heights towering above, the Dybbol of bloody memory, scene of the last desperate stand of the Danes in '64, ere the Prussians wrested the two fair provinces from them. "It's early to anchor, and I hate towns," said Davies, as one section of a lumbering pontoon bridge opened to give us passage. But I was firm on the need for a walk, and got my way on condition that I bought stores as well, and returned in time to admit of further advance to a quiet anchorage. Never did I step on the solid earth with stranger feelings, partly due to relief from confinement, partly to that sense of independence in travelling, which, for those who go down to the sea in small ships, can make the foulest coal port in Northumbria seem attractive. And here I had fascinating Sonderburg, with its broad-eaved houses of carved woodwork, each fresh with cleansing, yet reverend with age, its fair-haired Viking-like men, and rosy, plain-faced women, with their bullet foreheads and large mouths. Sonderburg still Danish to the core under its Teuton veneer. Crossing the bridge, I climbed the Dybbol, dotted with memorials of that heroic defence, and thence could see the wee form and gossamer rigging of the Dulcibella on the silver ribbon of the Sound, and was reminded by the sight that there were stores to be bought. So I hurried down again to the old quarter and bargained over eggs and bread with a dear old lady, pink as a debutante, made a patriotic pretence of not understanding German amid calling in her strapping son, whose few words of English, being chiefly nautical slang picked up on a British trawler, were peculiarly useless for the purpose. Davies had tea ready when I came aboard again, and drinking it on deck, we proceeded up the sheltered Sound, which, in spite of its imposing name, was no bigger than an inland river, only the hosts of rainbow jellyfish reminding us that we were threading a highway of ocean. There is no rise and fall of tide in these regions to disfigure the shore with mud. Here was a shelving gravel bank, there a bed of whispering rushes, there again young birch trees growing to the very brink, each wearing a stocking of bright moss and setting its foot firmly in among golden leaves amid scarlet fungus. Davies was preoccupied, but he lighted up when I talked of the Danish war. "Germany's a thundering great nation," he said. "I wonder if we shall ever fight her." A little incident that happened after we anchored deepened the impression left by this conversation. We crept at dusk into a shaded backwater where our keel almost touched the gravel bed. Opposite us on the Alsen shore there showed, clean-cut against the sky, the spire of a little monument rising from a leafy hollow. "I wonder what that is," I said. It was scarcely a minute's row in the dinghy, and when the anchor was down we sculled over to it. A bank of loam led to gorse and bramble. Pushing aside some branches, we came to a slender Gothic memorial in grey stone, inscribed with bas-relief of battle scenes, showing Prussians forcing a landing in boats and Danes resisting with savage tenacity. In the failing light we spelt out an inscription: Den bei dem Meeresübergange und der Eroberung von Alsen am 29. Juni 1864 heldenmütig Gefallenen zum ehrenden Gedächtnis. To the honoured memory of those who died heroically at the invasion and storming of Alsen. I knew the German passion for commemoration. I had seen similar memorials on Alsatian battlefields, and several on the Dybbol only that afternoon, but there was something in the scene, the hour and the circumstances, which made this one seem singularly touching. As for Davies, I scarcely recognized him. His eyes flashed and filled with tears.